Sometimes I think people get rid of stuff and then have to replace it because they found out they actually did need it. I'm trying to make it like a little bit nicer lighting in here, but I can't, and I'm sorry. This video, as you can see by the title, is kind of a little bit of my backstory, for lack of a better word. In the end, when it comes to minimalism, intentional living, all this stuff, and I'm thinking about it, and I watch minimalism videos, and I've shared with you why I gravitate toward them. And the simple thing is that I like clean. I thrive on clean. But a lot of, like when I'm watching videos on the people that inspire me and I read through the comments, a lot of people don't really know where to begin, and that's how they find these videos. But that's never been a problem for me. Seriously, I can tell you, this is why I made this video, why I'm making this video. The 5 things that people always say to start with when you're decluttering is so simple. It's not applicable for me. So they always say start with your closet, right? So if I were to go into my closet, I have a section about this big. I don't know how to make this, maybe 1.5 feet wide. And the reason it's 1.5 feet wide is skirts get flopped over, and so it takes up a lot. So there's maybe 5 or 6 skirts and about that many shirts and about 2 pairs of pants. I live minimally. If it was up to me, with an exception, and I know if you've been around my channel, you know what that exception is right off the bat. So going into the closet to declutter, to kind of pare down my life, that is not helpful for me. I lived in a 770 square foot home for 10 years. We had a 1950s house, which means your closets are tiny. And I have a husband that was 32, I think, when we got married. Why did the light change? I don't understand. But okay, thank you. He was 32 when we got married, and he still had clothes from high school. So he doesn't get rid of stuff, and this is 1970s, 80s, which means polyester. It'll never die. And so for the most part, he's the one that's got more of a larger section of clothes. He has good pants, but he has pants that he does not want to get thrown away, even though there's holes in it, because they could be work pants that he can destroy. I understand. I'm like, well, you don't need 5 of those. You just need 1. That's wasteful, and you don't waste. He's a pastor's son, so you don't waste. My hands are tied on this. He has shirts that he doesn't like and won't wear, but it's wasteful. You don't waste. So, like, I can't declutter that. I can declutter my stuff, and I do, and I keep it to a minimal. So clothing is out. Number 2, your kids' clothing, right? I'm going to tell you another story. I was watching these videos and taking everything, and I was like, you know what? That makes sense. Kids' clothing. What do I see always on the floor in my kids' room? Their clothing. This one makes sense, so I'm going to declutter it. And I got rid of stuff that I kept seeing on the floor, because I'm like, obviously you don't need it. Until the day when my 5-year-old, at the time, he's 6 now, my 5-year-old said, Mommy, I have nothing to wear. It's like, what do you mean you have nothing to wear? And I go to the closet, yeah, there's his church pants and his church shirts up there. I was like, where's the rest of your clothes? They must be in the laundry. And I thought I had done all the laundry, we're caught up. Obviously not. And I went there and there was nothing in the laundry. He literally had, I think, 2 t-shirts and 1 pair of pants. I'd gotten rid of the rest because I kept finding the stuff on the floor. Well, that kind of backfired on me pretty big. The older boy will keep his stuff more taken care of. The younger boy, not so much. And he's 5, and you would think that I would, in my mind, I'd be like, okay, we're still learning. But I kind of expect a 10-year-old to help his brother. I guess at that point he was 9. So I really learned my lesson in that. I'm not telling you this so that you hoard all of your children's clothes. I'm going to tell you that wouldn't work. To this day, I'm still particular about what my boys have. They have 4 short sleeves, 4 long sleeves, 2 to 3 church shirts, 2 pants, 2 church pants, and then 4 to 5 jeans. It just depends. I would do less, but then I have learned that if I do any less than 4, and I kind of keep it at 4 to 5 depending on just what we have. If I do less, I have stuff that have holes in it or stuff that doesn't fit right and they'll never wear it, and we're in a rut. So I've just kept it at that. For pajamas, they have 2 pairs. Because this is something that my husband started. It was a habit that my husband started from the beginning. Yeah. Those habits are so important, y'all. And it was, you have 1 pair of pajamas for the whole week. Unless you're sick or something else happens, you have 1 pair of pajamas. You get up, you get dressed, you put your pajamas on your bed. The pajamas on the bed part, especially with that 6-year-old, has never seemed to click. But he only gets that 1 pair of pajamas, and if he has to sleep in his underwear, which he hates, then he sleeps in his underwear until the clothes are found. And usually they're under the bed or shoved into a corner or the dress-up tub. Most of the time, that's where they are. But that was a habit, so you just have the 2. So when Saturday comes around and you get your before Sunday shower, you take a shower, you get a new pair of pajamas. Obviously, you get a clean pair of underwear every day. You get, sometimes you can get socks to work for 2 days in a row, but for the most part, it's usually with the younger ones that you can get it for 2 days in a row. With the old ones, definitely not. You get your socks. You get a fresh pair of socks. That was a habit that was really started from the beginning, especially with those, and has stuck. So because of that, everything that is kept to a minimal. So we've canceled out mom and dad's clothes. We have canceled out the kids' stuff. Now let's talk about toys. So with toys, I have always been kind of minimally. I would say, I've seen what people get rid of, and I'm like, we have never had that amount of toys. I would always keep it much less than that because, and even the toy rotation was too much for my head. I couldn't do it. And we kept it minimally because of our space. There just isn't the room. The kids have a tote that you're actually propped up on. Let me show you really quickly. I have a tote like this. So it's, here's my 8x11 Erin Condren. There you go. And that keeps their special stuff in there. So I have a son that's got some journals that he keeps in there, his Rubik's Cube. I have another one that keeps some of his Hot Wheels in there, some other stuff. Whatever that is special and personal to you, you need to keep in that tote. We've always done that, I think, for a long time. At least 4 years. At least 5 years. Most likely 6. Because I think the 2 older ones, we started it with them. So they've always had that. Insofar as stuffed animals, I think at one point my son had 3, and I was like, this is too much. You need to cut it down because they just end up all over your bed and then kicked off on the floor and then kicked out here, and then it's just too much. So they had less, and going back to it, it's always been simple. Shoes, purses, accessories. Probably the most I've ever had is earrings. That's my accessories. I've had 1 purse. Only once in my life did I have 2 purses in the house. Actually, twice in my life because I just got one for Christmas. So I technically have 2 purses in the house. But a couple months ago, my sister gave me one for my birthday, and I had a really good Ralph Lauren leather purse that had lasted me for such a long time that I loved it. It just, after a time, the straps basically were very, they just weren't good anymore. I can't think of the word. Very worn. And when I say very worn, very worn. They would snap. You could tell they could snap at any moment. And I kept it because I was going to try to get them replaced. And it sat in my closet for April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. It sat in my closet for 7 months and I hadn't done anything with it. And a friend of mine was talking about how she's trying to really make things eco-friendly and repurpose everything, and I gave it to her. And I have no idea what she did with it. She loved it. It blessed her socks off, and I didn't feel that pressure to, this is a good purse, I have to get this fixed. I didn't feel that pressure anymore. And so that was nice. So that's pretty much it when it comes to accessories. When it comes to shoes, the most I've ever had in my life was 3 pairs. I had a pair of boots, I had a pair of tennis shoes, and I had a pair of flip-flops, church shoes, whatever. That was the most I've ever had. And right now, I have 2 pairs. I have church and I have my tennis shoes. I'm not a shoe person. I don't have stuff to match different outfits. I try to just, whatever. Que sera, sera. So all of these things, I'm trying to like go down the list. That, you know, that was the 4th thing that you got to declutter. The 5th thing is like stuff in your kitchen. Things like extra sippy cups. That seems to be the #1 thing that people are talking about. Outside of the toys is the sippy cups. I'm like, we never had sippy cups. We taught them how to do this. My husband hated sippy cups. He's like, you can never get them clean. And sure enough, we would have mold buildup at some point. So all of this to say, like, people, there is a list of what to declutter. Go through your cabinet, pull out expired medicine, go to this, pull out that, go through your junk drawer. I've never had any of that. My husband does. I don't touch his stuff. That's his stuff. That's what he wants to do. He wants to deal with it. That's his. My junk drawer is probably this container right here. This is a work in progress. It's basically, I'm putting together a home management binder. I have, you know, my work, can't even think of this, what this is called, bullet journal. And I just threw everything in here. That's my junk drawer. There's random pens in here. There's random paper clips. There's a bunch of notebooks that I have to deal with. Papers. Everything is just thrown in there. That's what I have to deal with. I can't declutter that. That's something I need. I just don't have a good system for it. And that was where I'm coming to it. Actually, that helped me a lot. I don't have good systems in place. So when I'm decluttering and I'm trying to make my home intentional and living friendly, that's not the word, but when I'm trying to create a home atmosphere that I feel comfortable in, going and having a declutter your closet, declutter the toys, declutter the kids' clothes, declutter your shoes, declutter all of that, I might get 1 or 2 things. Maybe. I don't get trash bags of stuff. Even to the point of my one weakness, which is books. If I was to go and declutter right now, maybe a few, because the rest of them, I'm like, I can't afford to replace these, and I want to read them. And I have goals to read them, and I know I will get to them because I am a big reader, and I can pass them along or return them, some of them are borrowed, when I am done. But it's still a work in progress. Like, that would be the #1 thing to get rid of. But insofar as everything else, it's just setting up good habits. So what do you do when you can't just declutter based on a system like that? So how would I declutter? How would I get to that point where I want to be? So the thing that does really help me is setting an amount of stuff that I want to declutter. If I think about how much stuff is in the house and I say, you know what, 75 items gone would just make things a little bit easier. You have to also think about, am I going to have to replace this if I get rid of it? So many times I think people get rid of stuff and then have to replace it because they found out they actually did need it. But setting an amount to get rid of is something that I work towards. And then I can really think about the item before I get rid of it. Some things it's like, yeah, nope, this can go. And that's probably the first dozen items that I get rid of. I can do it without thinking twice. Then it gets a little bit harder, and that's what I found with the November challenge that I was telling you about in that other video. I'll try to leave it linked above or at the end or something like that. For us, living minimally or intentionally or whatever has to do with some family goals. So a lot of it is, if I don't have to constantly be cleaning and telling the kids to take care of their stuff, I'm going to have a better attitude. Now, I'm not saying that create a perfect environment doesn't mean that I won't have times when I'm frustrated. I'm still working on my attitude regardless of whatever environment I'm in, but you don't put a smoker trying to quit smoking within a smoke shop. So if I'm trying to work on my attitude, don't put me in a situation where I'm going to constantly be tested to the point where, you know, you throw your hands up. So these types of things are helpful. So many articles and other things really stress that if you have somebody that has anxiety and depression and things like that, less is more is very beneficial to their health. I have a husband dealing with that, and I have kids that are starting to exhibit those type of symptoms. And so I want to create a very simple, clean environment for them. So that would work with our family goals. A long-term goal that I have in mind, which is we want, my husband wants to go back into ministry. Well, if that's the case, like, I know that as tight as everything is now financially, it's going to be a lot more so. And we're probably not going to have the two quarters to rub together, as my mother-in-law would say, who was a pastor's wife. You won't have that to put into stuff. And that's, you know, I do stuff without thinking twice. Like, oh, I need a notebook to write in right now, so let me grab something that's really nice and pretty and aesthetically pleasing. That makes sense. Also, too, like, the more stuff, the more you need to contain it. Well, I want something pretty to contain it. I don't just want apple boxes of stuff in it because it's practical. So my thinking is if there's less stuff, then I have the more aesthetic pleasing look that I'm going for. Having a family goal, setting your amounts, those are really helpful things. Insofar as trying to go forward in this, you know, I was hoping to have like a ton of tips to be able to give you. And the reality is that I'm still reading, watching, learning, and a lot of times it's difficult because it's like I can't apply this to my life, or some of these minimalism people don't homeschool. And you're like, well, I've got kids around me all day. It's not like I can send them to school, clean up, and then have them back, which is, again, why I mentioned those two people in my last video that do homeschool and have their kids around them all day. It's kind of one reason why I really like them. And past and present and stuff, and the dad loses the wife. And I'm hearing it more and more, I think, as I get older, or maybe I'm just more aware of it as I'm reflective. And all I can think of is if I could get the home running in such a way that it wouldn't overwhelm my husband if I was gone and these systems were in place, the less stuff I have, the easier that's going to be. So that's always in my mind. I know it's kind of probably gruesome, not gruesome, morbid to think about, but it's true. Like, as a mom, we do think about these things. So that probably would fit into the goal category, but it's my why as to why I'm really working towards this and really thinking about it and really setting up things like that. Because if the kids have less to see of it being in place, the more that they can step up and keep these things in place. I did want to address one more thing before I close out, because it has really been on my mind and on my heart, and I've been discussing it with a friend, and that is Decor. I love how some people decorate their home. I love it. I see it, and it's peaceful, and trying to duplicate it in my own home seems to cause a lot of stress. And a specific friend of mine, she's such an angel, she has been asking me, like, do you want, you don't sound like you want a decorated home, which is fine. Like, I'm not, she's not attacking me. And it was a really good thought. And a more decorated home does mean more stuff. But I like when people aren't stressed. I really tense up when person in authority, in this case it would be my husband or anybody that's older than my kids, but even to a certain extent my kids, I get so tense and so uptight when someone is frustrated. Really tense, really uptight, to the point where I will, whatever is causing them that, I will get rid of it. So if I have something that I think is pretty, a coffee table with books laid out, because that's something that I would like, but the books get knocked on the floor and my son keeps bonking his head on it or kicking it with his foot or stubbing it or whatever, in order not to cause that frustration that's constantly there, I would rather just get rid of it. If I have a picture of flowers that I created on the table and it's constantly being moved each time dinner is placed on the table because it's just in the way and it's getting knocked over constantly, I would rather remove that than constantly cause some kind of friction. Even to the point where, yeah, we'll get used to this, but my patience must be really small, because I'm like, I'd rather not wait. I would rather peace be here. I'm mentioning that not just to kind of have a conversation, but to kind of give you, the viewer, another thought to think about. That doesn't come out right, but it's that idea. Is there a reason why you're doing this? Are you just so frustrated that you want to declutter, but maybe your spouse will keep bringing stuff back in, so there's just going to be this friction that's going back and forth? Or are you wanting to get rid of it or live a lifestyle, but you stress spend? You're going to have to, and this was something that my angel friend pointed out, you're going to have to tackle those things that cause the friction first, not the end goal. You have to tackle the obstacles first. So I thought that was a really good point that she made, and I wanted to close with that thought. So I hope this was helpful, especially it's more chit chat type of video with minimalism and intentional living. I don't really like the term minimalistic. I know what it means, but it's like the moment you use it that you have to meet a certain criteria in using it. I think intentional living or conservative living, you know, conserving what's important to you, that's what conservative means, was probably more the type of terminology I would use. Intentional, conservative, minimalist, if that just puts a picture in your mind of what you want. So with that, I will see you in my next video. Bye.